me this long to say it, but it's true. You don't have to be productive right now. Um, I think this quarantine has sort of had these waves where there's different levels of like realization and response to what's going on. So like the initial wave was like, oh, I don't know what's going on. And I think the wave after that was sort of like, okay, this is an opportunity to do all the things I've said I've wanted to do that I've never had the space or time for before. So I'm going to do those. And then this current wave that we're seeing right now is more like, actually, no. We're being told not to do things very explicitly, and that's for good reason. If you're trying to like perpetuate this idea that you should come out of this better than you were before, like check where that comes from, essentially. And I think I'm kind of in that same space. I initially really didn't look at this time, for however long it goes, as much of anything. Was obviously aware that I didn't have any outstanding issues or reasons to be nervous or fearful as far as like my immediate future was concerned, and I recognize the privilege in that in itself, or even the privilege to be like, oh, I'm in this space where I have all this free time. Let me use that to be productive in some other sense, which is really callous advice. I think what the shutdown of so many systems and forms of entertainment has provided is opportunities for some people who are not still like essential workers or required to work because it is essential to them, like, maintaining their life. You have people who basically just have more free time than they know what to do with, who are basically looking for direction. But I think the first people who spoke in that, void, in that gap, were like motivational speaker type people, or just really like kind of go-getter attitude type people. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that, except for the fact that this is not like the agency is missing. So it wasn't like you were just like, okay, I'm going to take, a week off, I'm on vacation, I'm going to relax or something like that. Or just, I'm just going to take some time away from work. It's literally, I am being forced out of my usual structure and routine. And this amorphous space that I'm in needs some definition, and I'm looking for that definition. And until I find that definition, I'm basically just distracting myself. And then these people come in and are essentially like, oh, do that thing, you just be productive, do something, do make. And I found it kind of difficult to do that. I think a lot of people have found that difficult to do it because this is not a, free pass. It is a crisis. It is a space where people across the globe are having to react and adapt and are being made painfully aware of how little they're in control of what happens to them, but also what little agency like they really have. So I can understand wanting to get on this wave of, oh, I'm going to be productive, I'm going to do this thing, just to feel like you have your agency and you have your control and you have your power back. But that's only works if you're in a situation where you're able to actually like do that sort of like next sort of thing, as opposed to someone who is still an essential worker, who still is working their 9 to 5, who still is working whatever work they can work because they need to do that in order to survive, or so that somebody else can survive. So to assume that, oh, this is just free time for you is a space of privilege, which admittedly is probably skewed to the fact that, these people are saying this stuff on the internet. It's not like what you're seeing in the news. or like through mass media, it's like what individuals themselves are perpetuating because they're the kind of people who would have been saying this stuff before anyway. And so they're just being very opportunistic in that sense. And so people are kind of following that wave. But, social media groupthink is terrible and is probably especially worse now because so many people are just on social media because they don't have anything else to do. And I was initially in that wave of like, oh, I got to do something. There are these things I've been wanting to do that I've been talking about off and on for like months or years now. This is a perfect opportunity for me to do them. And I hadn't been able to muster like the will or the desire to do those things. And I was kind of like questioning, well, why? And then I kind of just spent more time with myself and came to understand that it was just like, well, part of me just didn't have like the structure or the mindset necessarily to support those things. But the other part of me was just recognizing that this is not a free space. This is a crisis. This is a position where, at any moment things could go really up or really down. And that is on a personal level and on a, international level, like literally like the entire spectrum of scale, because it could be like, oh, I'm sick, or my family member's sick, or someone in my immediate family is sick, or I happen to bump into someone, at the store, or just doing these other essential work that I need to do in order for me to survive. And now I've lost all the supposed free time that existed because it never actually existed, or something on a larger scale has happened, and now my ability to interact or do certain things is being further limited or restricted because of what's going on. It's not as free a space, and really I think the only work, if any work, can be done outside of like essential work in this time is like just deep, like simple, like personal work, and not like personal development, like, oh, I'm trying to be a better person or whatever. Just understanding yourself, just understanding how you are feeling, how you're responding to this crisis, how you are coping. Because I think a lot of this productivity spike was just a way to cope. It's like, I have this free time, I don't know what to do with it. I'm not working in the same way I thought I was working before, so let me work on this thing that I think I might be able to put more energy into, and that will also distract me from the reality of the situation that I'm in. But like, a distraction is a distraction. It's not going to change how you are feeling foundationally. And even if supposedly like this does work out for you when you end up, post-crisis having or being like really on track to get what those things that you've been saying that you've wanted and those things that you've been working towards for a long time, mentally you might not be equipped to either handle it or actually be in a space to really appreciate what it is that you devoted yourself to work towards, because you were devoting yourself to work towards that as a way of distracting yourself from what you were actually in, and not as like an extension of you already being in a peace, in this place of stability and strong foundation. So my advice, if people are still seeking advice on what to do during this time, is to just take things day by day, to not obsess over some sort of project, or having to force yourself to be creative or do really anything other than like keep yourself alive and keep yourself moving forward, keeping yourself moving day to day. So if you have to pick up a project or whatever to do that, but really the only work that I would suggest anyone does is just the deep, slow, personal work of just understanding yourself and just recognize who you are. And that's not in a sense of anything huge or major, but just really like tap into yourself, just really like learn about yourself, just come to understand yourself better, so you can just understand what it is that you're feeling, how it is that you're responding to this current situation, and so that you can just be better equipped to reach out to the right people, reach out to the right resource, find the right trigger for yourself in a good way. A good trigger will also determine that triggers that are detrimental to your health. And really just take care of yourself, like mentally, as best you can, because honestly, I think that's the only thing that really matters and is really going to make the distinction, not so that you come out looking different or whatever lofty goal, but just that you have the ability to recognize that you survived, and that, you know, if this happens again, you know, a year from now, a decade from now, 50 years from now, a crisis like this, or one that is similarly debilitating to you personally, um, you have a game plan. You can respond. And it's not necessarily anything physical, but it's just like mentally setting up safeguards, setting up ways and systems to just help you cope and get through in a way that's not destructive. That's the only work I would suggest right now.